You think you know the Vitruvian Man? Circle and square. Perfect proportions. Renaissance genius. But there is a triangle hidden between the legs that almost nobody sees. A London dentist just published findings in the Journal of Mathematics and the Arts in 2025 that solve a 500-year mystery. Leonardo did not just draw ideal proportions. He encoded the exact geometric blueprint that governs how your jaw closes, how your skull forms, how force distributes through bone when you bite down. The ratio buried in that drawing matches the tetrahedral constant found in nature's most efficient structures, 1.64, the same number that defines optimal craniofacial architecture according to modern dental anatomy. Da Vinci understood human proportion at a level that would not be formally recognized for another 4 centuries. How did a Renaissance artist with no medical degree discover what scientists only confirmed in the 20th century? The Duke surrounds himself with architects, engineers, painters, mathematicians. Leonardo measures young men. Britannica confirms he spent months on this work. He records everything: distance from elbow to fingertip, shoulder width, head height, navel to ground. He is searching for the ideal form where every part relates to the whole as a simple fraction, 1/8, 1/10, 1/6. But reality fights him. Royal Collection Trust documents show that when Leonardo actually begins measuring his models, the truth refuses to fit the theory. He finds himself writing proportions in 12ths, 17ths, complicated ratios. He corrects his observations, trying to match ancient ideals. The human body will not cooperate with divine geometry. He measures horses in the ducal stables, detailed measurements, multiple animals. Horses do not embody divine proportions. These studies are pure empiricism, no philosophy, just data. Around this time, somewhere in 1489, according to Oxford Academics' Occupational Medicine Journal published in 2019, Leonardo obtains his first human skull. A real one. He begins true anatomical work. Cutting into bodies will come later. For now, he studies skulls, tries to map sensory nerves, wants to understand the brain's structure. He needs this knowledge to investigate emotions, senses, the mechanics of life itself. But he knows the ideas. The Roman architect, who designed artillery, who wrote that temple proportions should mirror the human body. Vitruvius claimed a perfectly proportioned man fits inside both circle and square, the navel at the circle's center, arms and legs touching both shapes' edges. Vitruvius gave no mathematical framework, just words. No drawings survived with his text. Francesco di Giorgio Martini makes 3 attempts in the 1470s. Giacomo Andrea creates his version in 1490. Leonardo dines with Andrea that year. All these drawings fail. They force the body into geometry, center both shapes on the navel as Vitruvius suggested, and the proportions distort. Limbs stretch wrong. The figure looks inhuman. Then he fits the geometry to that body. This is documented across multiple sources, including Big Think's analysis from 2023. He makes the critical move that solves Vitruvius's puzzle. Square-centered on the genitals, circle-centered on the navel, 2 different centers. This breaks with every previous attempt. The drawing measures 34.4 centimeters by 25.5 centimeters. Pen and light brown ink. Traces of brown watercolor wash, paper with irregular edges. Close examination shows no sketchy lines. This was meticulously prepared, every line deliberate. 24 palms total. Then Leonardo adds his own observations. If you spread your legs to reduce your height by 1/14 and raise your arms until your middle fingers touch the line of your head, the navel becomes the center point of your spread limbs. The space between your legs forms an equilateral triangle. It is the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual using sources from the Journal of Mathematics and the Arts, published June 2025 by Rory McSweeney, a London-based dentist whose craniofacial analysis was peer-reviewed and published by Taylor and Francis, and from PMC's study on modern body measurements comparing 63,600 23 male Air Force recruits to Leonardo's proportions, showing his accuracy within 10% on most measurements 500 years later. Now back to the information. The left foot in the drawing sits awkwardly, intentional, demonstrating proportion. In the original, you can see indentations from Leonardo's compass points, pricks where he measured. The precision was obsessive. Then, in 2025, Dr. Rory McSweeney publishes in the Journal of Mathematics and the Arts, a dentist. Trained in craniofacial anatomy, he sees what art historians missed. That equilateral triangle Leonardo mentions between the figure's legs is not decorative. It corresponds exactly to Bonwell's triangle. He identified a fundamental geometric relationship in the human jaw, an equilateral triangle connecting 2 mandibular condyles and the midpoint of the lower central incisors. This triangle governs optimal jaw function, how force transmits when you bite. how the temporomandibular joint moves, how teeth occlude. Modern dental anatomy is built on this principle, 374 years before Bonwill formally described it. Measurements of the original drawing at Gallerie dell'Accademia confirm this ratio in the actual artwork. Buckminster Fuller coined the term tensegrity in 1961. Islands of compression in an ocean of tension. Structures that achieve maximum strength with minimum material through optimal force distribution. The tetrahedral ratio governs these systems. The skull organizes around tetrahedral and triangular geometries that maximize mechanical efficiency. Bonwill's triangle forms the foundation. The circle of Spee, the curve of Spee, optimal dental occlusion, all emerge from tetrahedral relationships. When you bite, force transmits through these geometric pathways. Modern studies of optimal human craniofacial proportions calculate a ratio of 1.64 plus or minus 0.04. Exactly what Leonardo encoded in his drawing. No microscopes, no x-rays, no computed tomography scans, no peer-reviewed journals, no formal anatomical training. He claimed to have dissected over 30 human bodies by the end of his life. PBS Nova's documentation from 2019 confirms this number. Monastery hospitals, medical schools across Italy. He befriended a centenarian in Florence, watched him die peacefully, then dissected the body. First early description of arteriosclerosis came from that work. He dissected by candlelight, left-handed mirror notes throughout, no refrigeration, sometimes working in darkness. Messy, smelly business, according to producer Doug Hamilton, who documented this for Nova. Yet Leonardo's anatomical drawings convey beauty, precision, no hint of the conditions under which they were created. Between 1510 and 1511, Leonardo worked at the medical school in Pavia, south of Milan, alongside Professor Marcantonio della Torre, access to perhaps 20 corpses that winter. The anatomical work now called Manuscript A. He concentrated on bones and muscles, analyzed the body in purely mechanical terms, developed illustrative techniques still used today, exploded views from engineering. Elevation, plan, section from architecture, multiple angles, layer by layer construction. Modern medical imaging uses these conventions. We are so accustomed to them, we forget someone had to invent them. He discovered how small vortices of blood help shut the aortic valve. This mechanism was not confirmed by modern medicine until the late 1960s, because Leonardo never published, his notebooks scattered after his death. The anatomical knowledge sat in private collections for centuries. Vesalius published De Humani Corporis Fabrica in 1543, 24 years after Leonardo died. That became the definitive anatomical text. Leonardo's insights remained hidden. The Vitruvian Man entered public consciousness. Giuseppe Bossi bought it, wrote about it in his 1810 monograph on the Last Supper, published a standalone study in 1811 titled Delle opinioni di Leonardo da Vinci intorno alla simmetria dei corpi umani, on the opinions of Leonardo da Vinci regarding the symmetry of human bodies. Galleria dell'Accademia acquired it in 1822. It has been there ever since. Rarely displayed. Light causes fading. Kept locked on the 4th floor. In 2019, the Louvre requested to borrow it for their 500th anniversary exhibition of Leonardo's death. Italian heritage group Italia Nostra filed a lawsuit claiming it was too fragile. The judge ruled in October 2019 that they had not proven their claim, but set maximum light exposure limits. The Louvre promised to lend Raphael paintings to Italy for his anniversary. Cultural diplomacy. It has come to represent culture, genius, humanism, Western civilization itself. Ideas far beyond what Leonardo intended. He was solving a problem. Vitruvius said perfect man fits in circle and square. How? Leonardo impresses Pacioli with his ability to depict intricate geometric shapes as art. Pacioli composes Divina Proporzione, in-depth study of the golden ratio, phi, 1.618. The divine proportion, a ratio where the whole to the larger part equals the larger part to the smaller, appears in Fibonacci sequences, in nautilus shells, in flower petals, in the Parthenon. Its value represents divine simplicity. Its definition invokes 3 lengths symbolizing the Holy Trinity. Its irrationality represents God's incomprehensibility. Its self-similarity recalls God's omnipresence. Its relation to the dodecahedron, which represents quintessence. Leonardo illustrates Pacioli's book, 60 leaves of full-page woodcuts showing solid and open geometric forms. Skeletal polyhedra that allow easy distinction between front and back, first illustrations of their kind. Divina Proporzione, completed February 9, 1498 in Milan, first printed 1509 in Venice. Leonardo illustrated Divina Proporzione, so surely he used phi in his most famous proportion study. Scholars search for it. Some claim to find golden rectangles around the Mona Lisa's face. No documentation exists that Leonardo consciously used the golden ratio in composition. Wikipedia's entry, updated as recently as 3 weeks ago, confirms this. Though Leonardo knew Pacioli's work intimately, though he understood phi deeply, the Vitruvian Man's proportions do not actually match the golden ratio. The text mentions only whole number ratios. What the drawing does contain is 1.64, tetrahedral, not phi, different principle entirely. Gallery de l'Accademia research shows Leonardo's proportions trace Alberti more than Vitruvius. Earlier drawings assumed circle and square should both center on the navel following Vitruvius. Leonardo made it work by offsetting, genitals for square, navel for circle, breakthrough. Leonardo had access to these ideas directly through both texts and personal relationships. The court at Milan was a circulation of knowledge. Architects, engineers, mathematicians, artists eating together, discussing manuscripts discovered in monastery libraries, arguing about ancient texts, measuring horses and humans, calculating dome structures, designing fortifications. When France invaded in 1499, Louis XIII's army overthrew Ludovico. Leonardo fled Milan in December. Luca Pacioli fled with him. They traveled to Mantua, then Venice, then Florence, where they shared a house until 1506. Friendship and collaboration continued. Evidence exists in Pacioli's later manuscript De Viribus Quantitatis, which was never completed, but related diagrams and notes appear in Leonardo's notebooks from the 16th century. Human body as model of cosmic order. This was Renaissance humanist thinking. Humans as measure of all things, perfect proportions in architecture and art, in the body, all reflecting divine mathematical order. The Vitruvian Man drawing, an effort to realize a classical idea the ancient world only proposed, speaks to the cultural project of improving upon classical ideals, like Michelangelo's David trying to surpass ancient nudes, like central plan churches expressing God's mathematical perfection. Vitruvian Man presupposes that with enough effort, idealism can be achieved in human reality. Around 1490, he measured living models and discovered the ideal broke apart. Variables in twelfths and seventeenths, bodies that refused simple fractions. He abandoned the proportion studies, or seemed to. Notes from MSE written 1513 to 1514 show he returned to the subject. The anatomical work he pursued with such intensity between 1510 and 1516 likely led him to reconsider proportion. Did he ever reconcile the ideal with the variable? His notes do not tell us. Mean male height 175.1 centimeters. Standard deviation 6.8. Female height 163.7. Standard deviation 6.6. Derived proportions for head height, arm span, breast to crown, knee height were slightly more than Leonardo's estimates. Groin height, shoulder width, thigh length slightly less. Except for arm span and thigh length, differences between scanner measurements and Vitruvian Man stayed within 10%. Arm span differed by 20%, thigh height by 29%, 500 years, different populations, different measurement methods, and most proportions matched within 10%. We do not know their ages exactly. Likely Tuscan, possibly Milanese. His notes and conclusions did not distinguish whether insights derived from a single individual or were aggregated. Vitruvian Man merged the concept of a perfectly proportioned man with observed measurements, not representation of an average. Leonardo could not rely on formal notions of population means and variability. Those statistical methods developed only over the last few centuries. His numerical observations were likely rounded to nearest integer. No measurement precision recorded. Close agreement. Leonardo was measuring something real. Systematic construction yields the ratio between square's side and circle's radius, matches published measurements of the original drawing, matches the tetrahedral ratio found in optimal spatial arrangements, matches modern calculations of optimal human craniofacial proportions. Human anatomical optimization. The drawing stands as both artistic masterpiece and prescient scientific hypothesis about mathematical relationships governing ideal human proportional design. Mathematical unity between the human figure and natural order. Vitruvian Man stands as testament to Leonardo's insight that human proportions reflect deeper mathematical principles governing optimal spatial organization. Researchers may re-examine other Renaissance works for latent scientific insights. The intersection of art and science that defined Leonardo's work continues yielding new discoveries 5 centuries after his death. 1509, Divina Proportion published. 1510 to 1511, dissects perhaps 20 corpses at Pavia. 1513 to 1514, revisits proportion studies and notes. 1519, dies at age 67 in Amboise, France. His anatomical drawings, proportion studies, engineering designs, paintings, notebooks scatter. Francesco Melzi inherits most. Some get published in garbled form. Some sit in private collections, some disappear. Sees the tetrahedral ratio, sees optimal craniofacial architecture principles, publishes peer-reviewed analysis, solves 500-year mystery. He had compass, ruler, pen, ink, candlelight, corpses, living models, friendship with mathematicians, court full of architects and engineers, obsessive empiricism, profound visual intelligence, willingness to measure everything. How the jaw achieves maximum bite strength with minimum muscle energy, how the skull protects the brain while allowing sensory organs optimal positioning. How proportions emerge from functional demands, not aesthetic ideals. They are constraints defining a solution space. Within those constraints, a specific ratio emerges, 1.64. The same ratio evolution, discovered through billions of iterations, optimizing craniofacial architecture. Leonardo found it in one lifetime measuring young men in Milan. Humans as embodiment of optimization principles governing matter and energy in three-dimensional space. The microcosm. Reflecting the macrocosm, not through mystical correspondence, but through shared geometric constraints. A tetrahedron packs spheres most efficiently, whether those spheres are atoms, cells, or cosmic structures. Same math, same ratio, same principle. Leonardo wrote that the human body was distributed by nature according to specific measurements. 4 fingers make 1 palm, 4 palms make 1 foot. But he did not stop at description. He asked why. Why those proportions? What constraint produces them? What optimization are they solving for? When you open your legs wide enough to reduce height by 1/14, when you raise your arms until middle fingers touch the line of your head, an equilateral triangle forms between your legs. Why? The navel becomes center of the circle because that is where the 6 triangles meet when you replicate the pattern. The genitals become center of the square because that positions the body optimally within the constraint. Everything follows from the triangle. That hexagon defines the ratio C over A equals square root of 8/3, 1.633. The tetrahedral ratio, same number appears in optimal 3-dimensional spatial organization, corresponds closely to proportional relationships Leonardo achieved through his equilateral triangle construction. The drawing is not just an illustration, it is a proof, geometric proof, that human proportions encode tetrahedral optimization. Modern science took until the 20th century to formalize this. Buckminster Fuller's tensegrity in 1961. Bonwell's triangle, studied extensively in orthodontics and prosthodontics through the late 20th century. Finite element analysis of skull biomechanics in the 21st century. All converging on the same geometric relationships Leonardo embedded in his drawing in 1490. He could not explain it in modern terms. No language of tensegrity, no concept of force vectors, no biomechanical engineering terminology. But he could show it, draw it with precision, measure it, prove geometrically that the human body fitting in circle and square produces a specific ratio, that ratio matching the principle nature uses to optimize structure. His engineering designs for flying machines, diving suits, military fortifications, water systems, were these also encoding optimization principles he intuited but could not formalize? His paintings, the precise use of perspective, the positioning of figures, the proportions of faces, did these follow geometric principles beyond aesthetic preference? Her head turned slightly to one side is inscribed in a circle whose center lies in her right eye. Proportion studies directly influencing painting. Leonardo notes that the head and profile can be drawn into a circle with center in the ear. Multiple sketches in his notebooks show faces inscribed in geometric figures, measurements of features relative to whole, everything calculated. The Last Supper, painted 1495 to 1498. Same period as Vitruvian Man and Divina Proportione collaboration. Christ's head at exact center, disciples arranged in groups of 3. Architectural perspective converging on Christ. Some analysts claim to find golden ratio proportions, others dispute this. What is certain is Leonardo constructed it geometrically with intense precision, multiple perspective points, calculated sightlines. He painted it in the refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. Ludovico Sforza commissioned it. Writer Matteo Bandello watched Leonardo work. Some days he would paint dawn until dusk without stopping to eat, then not paint for 3 or 4 days. Prior of the convent hounded him about the slow pace. Leonardo asked Ludovico to intervene, told the Duke he might be obliged to use the prior as model for Judas. The painting technique was experimental, not fresco. Paint applied to drywall with tempera and oil. It started deteriorating almost immediately. Has been restored many times, much original detail lost. But the geometric structure remains, the proportional relationships. Whatever optimization Leonardo encoded in composition. Commissioned by Francesco del Giocondo for his wife Lisa Gherardini, Leonardo never delivered it, kept working on it for years, brought it with him to France. It was in his studio when he died. King Francis III acquired it. Eventually it entered the Louvre collection, most visited painting in the world, most reproduced, most analyzed. Some say the ratio of height to width equals phi. No documentation supports this. Leonardo left no notes indicating conscious use of golden ratio in composition, but the Mona Lisa Foundation's analysis notes Leonardo was close personal friend of Luca Pacioli, who published 3-volume treatise on golden ratio in 1509. Leonardo illustrated it. He knew the ratio intimately. Whether he used it consciously in painting is unproven. What is proven is he used geometric construction, triangular composition, calculated proportions. 2 versions of Mona Lisa exist with mathematical similarities. Anatomy, engineering, art, mathematics, all approached with same empirical method. Raphael studied Leonardo's work, influenced by it, but Raphael's genius was compositional harmony and emotional clarity, making complex theological concepts visually comprehensible. Leonardo's genius was seeing through surface to structure, through structure to mathematics, through mathematics to optimization. He was solving for the hidden constraint that makes Vitruvius's claim possible. What geometric relationship allows a human body to fit in both circle and square, not approximately, precisely, with mathematically definable proportions? The answer is the equilateral triangle between the legs, the tetrahedral ratio it generates, 1.64, the same ratio optimal craniofacial architecture requires. 535 years later, Rory McSweeney publishes the analysis. The paper received March 28, 2025, accepted April 6th, published online June 26th, peer-reviewed. Journal of Mathematics and the Arts, Taylor and Francis. The breakthrough makes international news in July. Phys.org, Art News, Ancient Origins, Popular Mechanics, Modern Sciences. A dentist cracks Leonardo's code, not an art historian. Not a mathematician. A dentist who understands jaw biomechanics, who sees the triangle because he works with Bonwill's triangle every day, who recognizes the ratio because he calculates optimal occlusion, who knows craniofacial architecture from training and practice, saw the mathematical precision, but missed the anatomical principle because they did not work with jaws. McSweeney sees it immediately. The triangle is Bonwill's. The ratio is tetrahedral. The drawing encodes craniofacial optimization, publishes the finding, advances knowledge. A dentist looking at a Renaissance drawing, an astronomer noticing bacteria behaving like galaxies, a painter observing fluid dynamics, cross-pollination of knowledge domains. Everything connected through geometry, through proportion, through optimization principles governing matter and energy. Nature following mathematical law, divine proportion literally embodied. What else waits in Leonardo's notebooks? Windsor Castle's royal collection holds the largest collection, hundreds of pages, anatomical drawings, engineering sketches, mathematical calculations, observations on light, water, flight, perspective, most analyzed extensively. But McSweeney's discovery proves we still miss things. Context matters, training matters. A dentist sees what an art historian cannot because they look with different eyes. The implications extend beyond Leonardo. How many other historical figures encoded knowledge in ways we have not recognized? How much understanding exists in old texts and images waiting for the right combination of expertise to decode? The past is not static, not fully known. Each generation brings new tools, new contexts, new questions, finds new answers in old sources. Never satisfied with previous explanations. Always measuring again, calculating again, drawing again. Notes from 1513 to 1514 show him still working on proportion 23 years after the Vitruvian Man. Still trying to reconcile ideal with variable, still searching for deeper principles. His unfinished paintings, the Mona Lisa. Francesco Melzi, his student and companion, inherited most of it. Melzi took it back to Italy, tried to organize it. Eventually the collection fragmented, sold, scattered, lost, rediscovered piecemeal over centuries. Then Gallery dell'Accademia in 1822. There it stays, locked room, 4th floor, climate controlled. Occasionally displayed under strict conditions, maximum light exposure limits, conservation protocols. One of the most valuable drawings in existence, insured for millions, cultural heritage, national treasure. Proof that Leonardo's understanding of human proportions was far more sophisticated than anyone imagined. Not just measuring, not just calculating ideal averages, identifying the geometric principle that nature uses to optimize skull structure, jaw function, force distribution. Finding the tetrahedral ratio, drawing it with precision, encoding it in the relationship between circle and square. Showing that the human body fitting those shapes produces 1.64, the same number modern biomechanics calculates for optimal craniofacial architecture. Bonwell's triangle, with understanding of tetrahedral ratios, with expertise in craniofacial biomechanics, looked at it and saw. The genius was not copying Vitruvius, not measuring young men. The genius was asking what geometric principle makes those measurements optimal, what law nature follows, what optimization creates that form, then finding it, drawing it, proving it geometrically, leaving it for 500 years until the right person with the right training could confirm Leonardo was correct. The triangle defines the ratio defines optimal structure. The human body embodies tetrahedral geometry, 1.64, hidden in plain sight. In the most famous drawing of the human form ever created, waiting to be seen,